This season has it all, from epic gold hits that beat all chances to nail-biting close calls. Come back with us as we talk about the best, worst, and craziest times that make up what it's like to be a gold miner. You won't want to miss a second of the action, whether it's heart-stopping gear fails, fierce competition, or amazing finds. Get ready to be shocked, amazed, and really interested by the craziest moments from Season 14 of Gold Rush. Rick Ness's neighbor steals his suction line, threatening to destroy his comeback. Over in Kend, we catch up with the Ness crew. Rick is driving down a very muddy and wet road toward his work site. To get his mining career back on track, Rick Ness had to sell his late mother's home and sign the deed to his camp over the landowner, Troy Taylor. Rick really needs to find some gold by the end of the week, and he needs to find a working loader to do that. Rick tells Z that there is a lot of snow they need to move and they have to get to Monster Red as quickly as possible. He acknowledges that the faster he gets gold flowing back into his pocket, the sooner he will be able to start rebuilding his company back up to where it needs to be. Rick goes to meet Lando Bayless and Craig Stepler, who run a mining operation together only 20 miles away from his claim. Rick explains to them that he has a lot of snow, he must move, and he needs to get operations up and running because he has nothing going yet. He tells them he is looking for a loader as a short-term thing. His guess is that he will need one for a couple of weeks. Craig lets him know that he has 3 loaders, but only 2 are operational right now. He takes them to inspect the 2 loaders and choose the one that would be most useful to them, and Craig says he'd rent one to them for $100 an hour. Rick then tells them he has 5 ounces of gold on him, worth $10,000, and he would use it as a payment for the rented loader. The gold will get Nick 2 weeks with the loader. They head back with the loader and start moving some snow. 2 years ago, Rick dug 190 feet into the Raleigh Valley to remove 1 million yards of overburden to uncover almost $3 million in gold before he was forced to abandon it. During this process, Rick set aside a month's worth of pay dirt in 2 stockpiles, one next to Monster Red and another 1,700 feet away. It is a quick infusion of money he needs to fuel his operation. Z is excited about all the moves they are making to get back into the swing of their gold mining operation. He thinks this is Rick with a better outlook on life and more motivation than ever before. Rick is examining all of their equipment, and he says that everything looks good on the surface. Z notes that they have some valve handles missing, bent, but that they look operational. Rick wants to just turn everything on the wash plant back on to test it that way, instead of the slow examining of every piece. He decides their first action should be to put the sluice box together, and they go take a look at the water pump. As they examine the water pump, they notice they are missing a suction line. Rick and Z start looking around for the missing suction line, becoming increasingly annoyed as they realize it is missing. The filtration basket and suction line is what pulls water from the river and into the wash plant, where the dirt can be separated from the gold. Without these pieces, the wash plant will not run. Z wonders who could have been down in the plant to move their equipment around. Rick is sure that he left everything in order when he left, so he believes someone has taken it without his permission. Z asks how much it would cost to replace, and Rick says that 2 10-foot lengths and a basket would cost $15,000. Rick does not have the money to be able to replace these pieces. He is more sure than ever that someone knew how expensive the parts were and took them. It would have been quite difficult to move them, too, as they are not things that can just be thrown into the back of a truck. Rick knows someone has stolen his equipment, and he tells Z that he plans to track down the pieces before he thinks of ordering replacements. They cannot sluice without it, and they cannot afford a new one. Their only hope is finding who took it. Back in Duncan Creek, Rick is racing around his camp, making a phone call to an unidentified person saying that he knows they took his 10-inch suction line. He is cursing and arguing and tells the person on the line that he needs to listen. After asking around, Rick has discovered that a neighboring miner has stolen his only suction line that he desperately needs to get his operation going. Without this vital piece, he cannot pay back his debts or get back on his feet. Rick is on the phone telling the thief that they took what belongs to him, and he wants it back immediately. He stomps up some stairs, calling out for Z, telling him that he found out a guy on the other side of the mountain took it. He got the information from Kyle, who worked for him last season. According to Kyle, he says that he saw the guy poking around the area where the suction line was left and that he saw him on site. Z is stunned that he would just steal like that. Rick is having a hard time controlling his anger as he says he cannot stand stealing and he promises he will retrieve his suction line. Rick runs to his truck and goes racing toward the neighbor's work site. On his way there, he comes across a pair of men driving toward him in a big SUV and he pulls up next to them, both their windows down to communicate. When they disclose their identities, their faces and names are blurred out, and we learn that they are not the thief from the phone call. Rick tells them to follow him back to his site. As the two strangers drive around to follow him, Rick turns to the camera and says he knew the thief would not have the guts to see him face to face, so he sent his two employees to return the suction line for him. Rick says he's trying to control his anger because he just caught a glimpse of the suction line on the trailer and it is all messed up and smashed. If the suction line is unusable, then he plans to confront the thief in person and knock his teeth out. Rick chuckles in anger as he closely examines the suction line, which is scraped up and gray with use. He stomps away in anger, saying that the line is destroyed. He marches over to Z, who is observing from inside a truck, and tells him that the basket is destroyed and the thief sent his two monkeys to drop it off. We learn that the hose has been smashed flat and they used duct tape to push it together. Rick storms away in anger and he uses the excavator to pick up the suction line and basket off of the truck bed and just scrapes it off angrily. He yells at the two guys to tell their boss that he is coming for a visit as they drive away. Rick is still cursing in anger as he stares at the junk they brought him back, and he wonders why they would even send it back when it is clearly unusable. He turns to Z and tells him he thinks they should go up there and take his suction line, but Z cautions him to take a step back. Rick believes they owe him, and he does not want to let this go. Z tells him they need to do the quickest, safest option, and they can deal with the rest later. Z tells him that he should just ask to borrow a suction line and wait to cool off to deal with the thief. Rick thanks him for his sound advice, and they both get back to setting up their wash plant. Mike Beats' semi-truck almost slides off the hill. During the spring thaw, the ground in the Yukon becomes soft and unstable. Any heavy weight on the public highways can destroy them. To protect the road and motorists, the government bans any heavy loads from driving on the roads until the ground stabilizes. The Beats crew in Paradise Hill are ready to scoop up some easy pay from the Indian River, and if they want to reach their goal of 6,000 ounces, then they need to start moving quickly. Only 3 weeks into the season, Tony Beats, also known as King of the Klondike, is making a major change in direction. Since there is no gold coming in at his Paradise Hill operation, he has decided to put that on hold and instead move 40 miles to his Indian River claims. Tony is okay with this change in direction because he says that when they left the Indian River, they had the whole season stripped and ready to go, so now all they need to do is take a little bit off and begin their sluicing. He believes that this will be the fastest way for them to get some gold in their vault. In a flashback, we see that 4 years ago, the Beats lost their license on their Indian River claims. This means they were not allowed to mine in the area, but now they have permission to mine there once more. The go-ahead was greeted with joy as it gives the family a much-needed lifeline. Tony has everyone hustling and packing up all their equipment for their move to the Indian River. To get to their gold goal, they will need all of their heavy equipment ready. This first step is, of course, more time-consuming, as they had everything up on a hill and now they have to move everything back. Mike complains that they need to set everything up again and that it is a lot like starting from zero. Tony thinks that if all goes to plan, they will have 3 or 4 trucks going to the Indian River tomorrow, as he says that the water pump starts sliding off the truck bed, causing everyone to jump back. Tony is irritated by this mistake, noting they did not put a block behind the water pump to cause it to roll backwards, and now they have the chain that was meant to hold it in place snapped in two. He supervises the men as they strap the equipment into place properly. Everyone starts driving out in a line of trucks. From Paradise Hill, Tony's convoy must travel 40 miles south across muddy back roads, ending with a steep 20-degree climb to the top of the Hunker Summit at over 3,000 feet. Then they will move down Sulphur, which is a dangerous narrow, winding trek until they reach their final destination and their new home in the Indian River. As they drive to their destination, Tony takes out a long silver lunchbox that he claims to have had for 20 or 30 years, and he pulls out a sandwich to eat. Up ahead, Mike is paying close attention to the road, since it was on this route that he transported his father's 25-ton wash plant last year. If viewers remember, the wash plant tipped and fell off the truck and into the side of the road. Today, Mike halts the procession suddenly when he can no longer get the truck moving, seemingly stuck in the dirt road. He explains that he could not get out of gear fast enough to drop a gear, and he ended up losing all momentum, driving forward. He asks everyone to back up so he can make another run at the road. Mike revs the engine and the truck starts sliding to the side. Tony tells him to take a run at it, and Mike says no, as he will fall off the hill. On the road to Indian River, Mike Beat's 15-ton semi is stuck on a steep incline at the top of Hunker Summit. Tony asks Evan if he can get around Mike, and Mike says that he is sliding off of the hill. Tony tells him that everything is okay and that Evan will drive around him and give him a pull out of the soft road. Evan drives past and Tony asks whether Mike has the clevises and the chain to get rescued. Mike is more annoyed than ever and says he has nothing, and repeats that he is sliding off the hill, sounding frustrated that his dad is not as concerned as he is. Tony just says that Mike is whining and pulls out a cookie to eat from his lunchbox. It is quite a tense moment as Evan outs a chain on Mike's semi and starts dragging him behind himself. The semi seems to shift toward the right slightly, but is soon set right, and they are once again on the move. Tony chomps on his cookie as he notes that they got through that hole. He then comments that the situation was way worse for him than for Mike because he owns the equipment if it falls off the hill. Mike complains that his dad micromanages everything. As they reach the summit, Tony is glad that the rest of the trip is downhill and much easier than the way up. Flooded access road, the Beats crew in the Indian River are aiming to complete their target goal of 6,000 ounces of gold, and at the moment they have collected 0 ounces of gold. They are weeks behind schedule, and Tony is eager to get to work. After 3 weeks stripping at Paradise Hill, Tony put that operation on hold, as it was getting them no gold. Now that he has returned to his Indian River claims, he hopes to bring in some quick money. Tony explains that they have a few cuts down in the Indian River that are already stripped, thawed, and ready to go. He sees this as a nice little piggy bank ready to be cracked open as needed. The ground is some of the best that Tony has ever mined, bringing in more than $13 million with more floating right at the surface. Tony says that it is easier to get money out of the Indian River than in Paradise Hill, as the thawed-out cuts makes everything much smoother. Without needing to strip the ground, Tony saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to Tony, the cost of 1 ounce of gold from the Indian River is much lower than an ounce of gold on the hill. Before Tony can take advantage of the perfect conditions in the Indian River, he first must get his gear to the cuts. As they drive up to the cuts, Mike notes that they are missing something important. We then see a rushing river cutting through their path. The bridge has been washed away. Tony says they will be crossing the area a lot, so they need to fix it up. He is not surprised that after 5 years it is swept away, and no one was there to keep an eye on everything. Tony says that they will need to throw a culvert in so they can go to their cuts. Tony's pre-stripped cuts lie on the other side of a small creek that runs through his claim, but the bridge across it has collapsed. Tony's plan is to remove the old broken bridge, then bring in the 20-foot-long culvert and cover that up with tailings to build up a road across the creek and allow his equipment to access the cuts. Tony supervises as the excavator digs into the creek. Mike says that a good road is worth its weight in gold. Good roads save time, money, and stress. As Mike digs up the area, others hop in and attack strong hooks to the bridge. They hope their little excavator has enough power for the job, as all their other equipment is not available at the moment. Mike carefully starts pulling on the bridge, and Tony hops on top of it, saying he should have been a ballerina. Shockingly, Tony remains on the wooden bridge and Mike starts dragging it out of the creek. Tony is laughing and joking, saying that this is like a sleigh ride, instead of the extremely risky action that it truly is. As Mike starts putting more power into the excavator, the bridge shakes back and forth, forcing the men who were enjoying the sleigh ride to hop off. Tony refuses to get off, though, determined to enjoy this little trip. They then decide to keep the bridge on the side of the road to be disposed of at a later time. Tony notes that they still have a lot of ice and snow melting, which means they need to hurry and put the culvert into the creek before the water gets out of control. The flow of the creek is increasing as the weather gets warmer and their time is running out. Tony wants everyone clear as they move the massive culvert into the creek. He tells Mike to line it up as best as possible. To optimize water flow under the road, the 20-foot by 6-foot culvert must lie in the center of the creek. The culvert rolls in and Tony directs Mike to push it until he sees it is perfect. They then start dumping a ton of dirt on top of the culvert. Mike is smiling as he quickly dumps as much dirt as he can on top, wary that the creek water will rush in and wash everything away. To stop the water washing away the culvert, Mike races to secure it in place and build up the road. According to Mike, speed is key here because the longer they wait, the more work it will take to fix. If they are too slow, they will have to start everything from the beginning. Mike is frustrated when his excavator falters and splashes into the water with its load of dirt, splashing him with muddy creek water. Tony watches from the sidelines, laughing at his misfortune. He then explains that what Mike is going to do now is pull a pad down, then the trucks will roll forward, and they will then start dumping dirt and making the work quicker for him. The culvert is handling everything well. Using waste material from the rock trucks, Mike builds up the road around the culvert. Mike says that it is giving him enough dirt that they may have a 2-lane road once again. Tony says now they will be able to run pickup trucks through the creek. The Beats crew is one step closer to sluicing. Out in the Indian River, the Beats crew is gearing up for the ultimate challenge, a 6,000 gold-ounce goal, but the road to success is anything but smooth. Have they bitten off more than they can chew? Join us as we follow their journey filled with highs, lows, and everything in between. Indian River Cut is flooded Beats crew. Out in the Indian River, we see the Beats crew gearing up to meet their 6,000 gold-ounce goal. They have spent several weeks preparing and have yet to see a flake of gold to show for it. Tony has pulled out just about everyone out of Paradise Hill to get them to work on the Indian River Cuts instead. Tony started the year with a lot of chaos, having to spend a lot of money to open cuts on Paradise Hill. Then a few weeks later, he got the news that he was allowed back on the Indian River claims. So he risked everything to move his entire operation. Tony says that the sooner they get to sluicing, the happier he will be. He says that since he had a couple of cuts closed already, it should take them less time to start sluicing here since they should be frost-free by now. He estimates that he will be able to get going in the next week or two. There is only one catch with his Indian River claim. He is only allowed to mine there on a restricted water license. This means he cannot pump water from or into the nearby Indian River, so he must recycle all the water on his claim. Tony explains the plan to his son, saying that they are going to pump out the water until it is dry and pump it all into the pond where the dredge is, and off they will go. 4 years ago, Tony stripped one of his prized cuts near his dredge. It has since flooded with water, stopping him from getting to the pay layer below. Tony's plan for the quick gold is to pump over 1 million gallons of water out of the flooded cut through a new 100-foot-long pipe into the neighboring pond where the dredge sits. Once drained, he will be able to remove the final layer of overburden to expose the gold-rich pay layer that was hidden under all that water. As the crew watches on from the sidelines, the excavators are busy moving things around the worksite, and Mike comments it would be nice to have his brother Kevin around. Mike says this is the first time he has had to fuse together 5 sections of 20-foot-long polycarbonate pipe. According to Mike, where the pipes are fused together, they can use them however they like since they are very tough. He shares that they accidentally ran over one of the pipes with a D6 and there was not a scratch on it. Mike carefully fuses the pipes together with the help of a machine and one of the crew. The process requires that he shaves off bits of the pipe and smooths out the ends in order to make the fusing process easier. He says that it takes a bit of skill to get it right, and he keeps inspecting the cuts, noticing that one side is not cutting it to his liking. As Mike realizes that the blades are not cutting the pipe, we realize that a rough edge of the pipe is stopping the fusion machine's blade from making a clean cut. If Mike cannot fix this, then the pipe dream is over. Mike sighs tiredly over the malfunctioning machine, so he returns with a red chainsaw to finish the job by hand. Mike carefully tests the chainsaw against the end of the pipe and says he has to do what he has to do and begins to cut deep into it. Then he puts the pipe back into the machine to smooth out the ends. Now the pipe has a flush cut. The 400-degree Fahrenheit heating plate is inserted. After melting the ends of the pipes, Mike will pull them out and fuse them together. He shows how we can see from the side of the machine that the hot pan is starting to roll from the heat. Joint complete, the pipeline is dragged into place between the pump and the flooded cut and the dredge pond. Tony says that it is the moment of truth, and he turns on the water pump. He explains that if someone really needs to move a volume of water, they need to pop a pipeline in there, and a day later the water is gone. He is excited that they all need to get ready to start sluicing, and it's about time. Rick Ness, broken gasket, dies. In Duncan Creek, we meet up with the Ness crew, where Rick Ness explains that the past few days have been a nightmare for him since his water pump died on him. A broken water pump has shut down Rick's operation for 4 days, but against all the odds, he's been able to get a lease on a new one. Rick says he expects the new water pump to show up today, and he had a lot of help from the guys he is leasing it from, as everyone else that he called just laughed at him as if it was a joke. Rick says he made a good deal, and it is exactly what he needs to get back on the gold. From his left, a white truck hauling a bright red water pump is driving up, and he immediately knows that it's the guys he asked for help. He shakes their hands, and the man, Sean, explains that it should pump about 560 gallons. They say they will help him set it up, and Rick says that if it goes well, they should be able to just sling it out of the trailer and walk it down to his cut. Rick is over the moon that these guys are helping him with the new pump, the delivery, and the setup. They get rid of the old pump and replace it with the new, filled with hope. Rick carefully lifts the pump out of the truck bed, and he swings it gently into place. The new pump weighs over 2.5 tons and costs $200,000. If Rick damages this water pump, he will be all out of money and his season will end right here. The incline is extremely steep, and Rick is as careful as he can to maneuver the pump. Rick says that once they have the discharge line hooked up, then they can pick the whole pump up and move it where they want it, while the line will follow. They drill the line into the pump, and the previous owners show Rick the remote control that allows him to turn the pump on from afar. Rick tries it out and turns it on. Rick is back at the wash plant, watching as the water pump sends water through. The sluicing officially restarts after 3 days that have cost Rick nearly $20,000 in lost gold production. But with the leased pump in, he is back on the gold chasing his 20-ounce weekly goal. However, 2 hours later, the water pump unexpectedly shuts down. Chris is seen running desperately across the site to shut down the wash plant, which he says will save them problems. Once again, Rick's operation has stopped. He examines the water pump and figures out that they ran out of fuel, which is a very silly mistake to make, and he takes the blame for that. He is glad that Buzz caught everything before it could all go totally off the rails. Rick jokes that it was just a test for his crew and promises that he will not make the same mistake again. He now turns the wash plant back on manually, with a clear view of the fuel levels. Rick turns Monster Red back on, and the Ness crew is back to work. Ness crew truck accident. In Duncan Creek, the Ness crew is hard at work, driving a procession of heavy vehicles down a muddy track road. Rick is relieved that Tony has come through and is helping him out. Tony is letting him borrow a 700 and 2 rock trucks, perfect for his operation. Rick Ness has dug into his emergency fund to lease heavy equipment from Tony Beats delivered by local hauler, Derek Mamek. Derek lets him know he got hit by some rain on the way down, so they had to slow down considerably. Rick is not upset about this, only acknowledges that it is simply the way of things during spring in the Yukon. Rick hops into the machine with a happy smile. The new powerful equipment will ramp up production and help Rick hit his 1,000 gold-ounce season goal. Rick says that when he came back this year, this is what he pictured, being surrounded by big excavators and big machines. As Rick chases his 20-ounce-a-week target from his leftover stockpile pay, camp cook Travis Kinnikin is in Rick's old haul truck, and Buzz Legault is in the loader, repairing the road into the mine. Travis complains that the 700 with its huge tracks has chewed out the road. During the spring, the road becomes very wet and soft, which means heavy machinery can destroy and ruin the roads. Travis explains that he and Buzz are now tasked with repairing the holes in the road left behind. He is dumping some gravel, and Buzz will then level the ground out with his loader. In the process of dumping some gravel, Travis flips the truck, and he curses in shock as he tries to climb out. The disorientation of the shaking and falling truck is a horrible twist from the previously tedious chore. Travis hops down and he seems to be okay, but he is deeply concerned with the state of the truck, which is now stuck sideways in a thicket of trees. He has no idea how to get the truck out. It is perilously close to rolling right down the incline. Travis is circling the truck and his breathing is very heavy and panicked as he notes that the truck looks to be extremely stuck, not likely to be removed on his own. He has no idea how to get it out of this ditch. It is hanging over a 30-foot sheer drop. Travis calls Rick with the bad news and lets him know that he is on the road down to the cut and that the shoulder just gave way on the road. He lets Rick know that his borrowed truck is on its side down in the ditch. Rick is upset about this and tells him that he is busy running the wash plant, so he will need to go down and fetch the 700 to lift the truck out of the ditch. Rick is determined to keep the gold coming in. He keeps running the monster red in the old 330. Meanwhile, Derek, who delivered the iron, takes the 700 to the stuck truck. Travis looks distraught and says it will take a good pull to get it out of the ditch, since it is such a heavy truck. Derek asks Buzz how they can get the rock truck out of the ditch, and Buzz quickly formulates a plan to grab the back end of the truck with the hoe so it does not roll away and then hook the loader to the front low corner. He believes that if they work together, they should be able to get the truck out, and he underscores the need for speed as it has begun to rain and the conditions will only get harder to work in. Travis explains that the excavator will stabilize the rock truck and they will pull it out with the loader, and then he will drive it out of the ditch and pray it does not roll. Their rescue of the rock truck is extremely dangerous, as any sudden movement can send it crashing down. Unfortunately, Buzz has to crush a poplar tree as he maneuvers the claw of the excavator into position behind the rock truck. Buzz can feel that the rock truck is on the verge of rolling and his voice shakes with cold and nerves. Derek tells him to add a bit of power. Everyone is extremely concentrated as they slowly pull the truck out of the ditch. They laugh in relief and Buzz tells Travis to stay off the road's shoulder. Buzz is grateful they had the 700, otherwise they never would have saved the rock truck. Rick is glad that they got the truck free and Travis is okay, and he is especially glad that they can focus on getting the gold now. The trick triumphantly continued on their way. Rick Ness, wash plant disaster. The Ness crew is hard at work, and Rick opens by saying that there is a lot on the line for him this year since he took a year off. This is a second chance for him, and he takes it very seriously. Rick Ness is on a comeback mission to hit 1,000 ounces and get his life back on track. He is already a third through the season, and he is working as efficiently as possible, sluicing through the stockpile pay dirt from the Raleigh Valley, and so far he has only mined 95 ounces of gold. Rick's use of the gold he has found so far has been for fuel, wages, and miscellaneous other expenses. He has already put his camp on lien, and he owes $150,000 to get it back. On top of that, he wants to take home some profit at the end of the year. In a flashback from 7 weeks ago, we see that Rick was confronted by the landlord, Taylor, who reminds him that skipping a year means he brought in no gold and he is still in debt to him. In response to this, Rick made a desperate move to secure access to the ground. He asked for another chance, and the landlord was very nervous that he would not be able to pull it off. The landlord needs something in exchange for this second chance, and he asks Rick if he has anything they can work out regarding their camp. Rick then decided he would be willing to sign the camp over to Taylor if he fails to pay back the debt. With over half Rick's gold spent on running expenses, he is down to only 36 ounces, and his first goodwill royalty payment on the camp is now due. Troy Taylor shows up to collect the lien for Rick's camp, and then he asks Rick how he is doing. Rick says that they are getting some gold, but he is trying to get more machines and people working, but everything is very expensive. He asks if Troy Taylor could give him to the end of the week to pay him 50 ounces of gold. Troy is obviously disappointed by this, and it is not what he was wanting to hear from Rick, but he agrees to give him an extension. Rick promises that he will have the gold by the end of the week. Rick is relying on a small crew to deliver the rest of the gold by the end of the week, or Troy will sell his camp and end the season. The entire crew is under pressure, feeling their futures are under threat with this deadline. Morgan notes that something is wrong with the wash plant as she sees smoke and flames pouring from the top of it. She calls Rick right away and then makes a run for the plant to turn it off. She has no idea what's happening when Rick drives right up and looks up at the plant in horror. As they move closer, the smoke has stopped and they climb up to see that the belt is destroyed. Buzz goes digging for a replacement and eventually finds one in an old wash plant that he can use. They manage to replace the belt and the wash plant comes back to life, saving the day. It's a race against time for Parker Schnabel as he faces a crushing blow. His only gold-producing plant is shut down. Can you feel the frustration building as he lets out an angry curse and hurls his walkie-talkie in frustration? How do you think Parker will navigate this setback? Will sending Chris down for cleanup be enough to turn the tide? Let's find out. Parker finds out his only wash plant is broken down. When Parker learns that his only gold-producing plant is shut down, he lets out an angry curse and he throws his walkie-talkie down into the passenger side seat. Tyson's message over the walkie-talkie was that since they mined out the Unforgiven cut so swiftly that he was shutting the plant down, an experienced miner like Tyson would be able to make the assessment of whether or not a piece of land has been mined for all it's worth, so this news is a blow. However, Parker's only reply to Tyson's disheartening message was that he would send Chris down there to do the cleanup. When issues arise, Parker's sense of responsibility does not allow him to burden his subordinates with the stress or fears he suffers from on the job. Likewise, Tyson does not hesitate to make a difficult decision, like turning off the wash plant, when he knows it is likely losing them money to continue running it when they have nothing to show for the time spent there. It is wise to stop throwing money into a sinkhole simply because so much money and time has been invested already. Tyson's assessment that the cut is all mined out was a problem, because according to Parker, the cut should have lasted them 2 to 3 weeks of gold mining, instead of the 1 week they got from that pit. Parker says that they flew through the cut. He has spent nearly every dime on Dominion Creek, leaving him with very little money to sustain himself. More and more money is running like water as the days pass by, and Parker has to keep paying to dig deep into the land to reach the deposits of gold he believes are waiting some 40 feet below the surface. The worst thing about the situation is that there are no other cuts ready to run. They had scheduled out a couple of weeks working on the Unforgiven cut before they would be ready to move on to a new area, and thus are left with nothing prepared and the season slipping away. The chances of going bust and having to rebuild after a loss of millions of dollars would be a deathly blow for all of their mining careers and hopes. Never before has Parker Schnabel been so close to destruction. They find out Dominion Creek is a success. Chris pulls out what looks like a thermos cup, the size of the container giving everyone some clues as to how much gold could be inside. Parker's desired amount that he wanted from the Unforgiven cut was 50 ounces of gold. But given that the cut was mined out weeks ahead of schedule, things are not looking too good for them. To hit the desired target, they would need to have collected 120 ounces from the last dig at the Unforgiven cut. The 30 ounces is worth $60,000. Parker flinches when the 30 ounces is announced and he lets out a pained breath. The total amount of gold from the Unforgiven cut is 408.95 ounces. All that Parker can say is that ain't good. As he rubs his eyes with both hands, Chris decides to move things along and begin talking about the Dominion Creek cut and the gold collected there. So we finally got some Dominion gold going, begins Chris as he opens the refrigerator door that holds all of the gold they managed to mine in the past week. Parker says he believes they ran 100 hours operating over the ditches of the money pit. Then he continues and says that on the Indian River, if they ran 100 hours of ditching, they would get, 50 ounces if that. The reason Parker makes this parallel is to set up the expectations that anything over the 50 ounces of gold they would have received back home is a step up. Now all that needs to happen is for Dominion Creek to have mined out over those 50 ounces. The Indian River could consistently give the Parker crew after 100 hours of hard mining. The air is tense as Chris begins to pour a river of gold into the scale. He calls out every big weight as they pass by, 10, 20, 40, 60. At this point, everyone can celebrate in moderation. They have surpassed the typical amount of gold they would have made in the Indian River. This means that the ditches of the Dominion Creek have proven to be more profitable than their old haunt, and it gives hope that this entire endeavor has not been a terrible mistake, as they have all feared for the past 2 months. Chris has not finished weighing the gold gathered from the ditches, the count continues. From 60, he jumps right to 90, 110, 120, 130, and with a final tap on the thermos, the scale settles on the final number of 132.45 ounces of gold. The total amount from the ditches is over $250,000. They keep repeating that it's not a bad haul from the amount of time the plant had to dig, including all the issues with the water. Chris says that on ditch dirt, it is some of the best they have ever had, and thinks of what they can squeeze out of the real pay dirt. On that happy note, Parker excuses himself and says his goodbyes, satisfied that his desperate plan to infuse their operations with some money was a success. Over the goodbyes and departure of the Parker crew, Parker says that to get 1.3 ounces of gold in an hour is actually really good, and that in theory that means the rest of the money pit should be flushed with more gold than even that excellent rate. Parker seems to want to manage the amount of excitement or hope he shows, unwilling to let too high expectations spoil the good luck they are experiencing. Rick Ness generator flooded. The middle-aged Rick Ness has a plan to bring in the 1,000 ounces of gold he needs after taking a year off. For 2 months, he has sluiced stockpile pay dirt, making 140 ounces of gold. Now that the stockpile is done, he needs to get back to digging. He is moving upstream to where Rocky is set up, and they are busy doing a 500-yard test on the bacon strip. To Rick, the ground seems good enough to mine, so he is on the way down to mine it. Rick's first major decision this season is to pivot to the 1.4-acre bacon strip, where last week's test run yielded almost an ounce of gold per 100 yards. To make the circumstances even better, the cut was stripped down to pay dirt almost 2 years ago, and it is ready to sluice. Rick is hoping it will deliver a quick score of 300 ounces of gold for him and keep his career alive. He only wants to be down a single day, and with this small crew and minimal equipment, Rick cannot afford to break anything. Working on the slimmest margins, Rick cannot afford to truck the pay dirt to his main plant, Monster Red, so he is moving everything to his old wash plant, Rocky. Rick has a lot of work to do, moving the pump, the generator, machines, and crew down there before he loses more time. The pump Buzz is disassembling will power Rocky the wash plant, and they are in a hurry. To get the pump and the generator to Rocky, they will need to take it a mile down the valley. Buzz says that the pump is very heavy and could be very dangerous, so they are using a machine to lift the 15,000-pound pump, which is full of fuel. On top of being extremely heavy, they are in a tight area where they need to swing the pump over the river. Rick warns everyone to stand back as he prepares to swing it over to the other side of the river. Any damage to the $200,000 pump will ruin the season and Rick's career. Rick safely gets it to dry land, and he leaves his crew to make the 2-kilometer walk down to Rocky. The crew finds it a very sketchy and perilous task that they leave to the new employee, Trey Charlie. Trey Charlie explains why this river crossing with the pump is dangerous, since he cannot see what he is doing or what he is driving over as he drives across the river. The water pump makes it to Rocky, and they begin to set up the suction line, and Trey returns with the 1-ton generator. They get everything hooked up with bacon strip pay already stockpiled next to the plant. They get the machine going. Rick moves to test the wash plant and is happy that it runs well. The sluicing is about to begin when suddenly Buzz comments that too much water is gushing out of the plant. They move to shut down the water pump, whose water pressure is way too high. They quickly figure out that the water pump is still set up for Monster Red, and it has been sending out twice Rocky's water capacity through the much smaller wash plant, and it flooded the generator. Buzz tells them that they have to disconnect everything, and they will now have to wait for the generator to dry out before they can fire it back up. Electricity and water combined can be deadly. Rick is left shocked and disappointed, his plans of sluicing squashed. Rick Ness' broken pulley. The Ness crew is back at Duncan Creek, and Buzz is hard at work hauling pay dirt and running 2 pieces of equipment. Rick does not think they will meet their gold ounce goal, and 100 miles east in the mountains above Keno, Rick Ness has brought in just over a tenth of his 1,000-ounce season goal. Since they are so behind, Rick has set a new goal for the crew of 60 ounces a week. The Ness crew is currently mining out the bacon strip, and things are not unfolding as desired. Last week, Rick's first big move of the season was to sluice the 1.4-acre bacon cut, but he was disappointed by only earning 11 ounces of gold. And this week, he needs 60 ounces of gold, or he will need to find a new location to mine. Currently, Rick is heading upstream, where his small wash plant, Rocky, is located because moving Monster Red would be far too expensive. Rick arrives and sees the wash plant gushing water, and he wonders out loud why there's a belt on the ground. He starts running toward the wash plant and calls out to Buzz in distress. He yells at him to shut off the water and says he can see a drive belt has fallen off. The plant is on the ground. He is very confused and starts investigating Rocky for answers. He reaches in and pulls out a ripped and mangled belt and throws it on the ground. Buzz and Rick closely examine the machine, and they see that the belt was worn right off the machine. Rick notes some major damage done to the pulley on the drive motor, which caused the belt to crumble. The pulley is what runs the entire machine, and since it is damaged, they have to replace it because it cannot be repaired. Rick estimates that the power will be down for several days. With this development, Rick has no hope of getting his 60 ounces for the week. His only shot is if he can get the plant up and running again, which means a new pulley wheel. A new pulley wheel will take days to arrive, so Rick decides to drive through the boneyard where 80 years of mining equipment has been left to rust. Rick knows of 2 conveyors that are sitting around and run on electric motors, just like the one he has, so he thinks he can take the pulley wheels from one of those. The only issue is he is not certain they will be the correct size. He quickly spots a pulley that would fit on the shaft that he needs to replace. But he realizes the diameter of the pulley is too big, but he wants to try it out anyway. When Rick compares the pulley wheel with the broken one, the size difference is massive. Rick speculates that by putting this on the Rocky, it might make the machine able to go from 120 yards an hour to maybe 140 or 150 yards an hour, running faster and harder. He adds they could reach their 1,000-ounce gold much faster. Rocky's pulley wheel drives the belt that makes the wash plant shaker deck vibrate to separate gold from dirt. Since Rick is replacing it with a wheel twice the size, it could potentially bring in 20% more gold. Buzz installs the wheel and says they have to take what you have and make it work when they're in the Yukon. He says now they only need to add the belt and pray it holds together. They start the engine of the wash plant, and the machine is definitely going faster. Their quick fix means they have only lost 3 hours of production, and running the plant faster should make up for the time lost. After some time, the wash plant starts malfunctioning and smoking, so Buzz runs up and shuts it off. Rocky has overheated because it was working harder than it is meant to. Buzz is annoyed they have to find a new solution, so he heads out to look for something closer to the normal size. The crew busies themselves with a cleanup, and Buzz is searching through the boneyard for a replacement pulley wheel. He finds a perfect one after a couple moments of looking around and replaces the oversized wheel. They have lost 4 hours of work, but have saved themselves days of lost labor. Parker hits gold. Crazy find. The Schnabel crew is working in Australia Creek. Mitch is busy shoveling a ton of dirt into the wash plant. The crew has been running for 3 days, and everyone is excited to find out if the virgin ground they are working will pay. We meet up with them as they are shutting down their operations and about to begin the first cleanup of the season on Australia Creek. According to Chris Dumit, the clean and gold extracting expert, the first cleanups are rarely known to bring in much gold because it is mostly a ton of ditch dirt, gravel, and rocks. While they are not very hopeful, they are determined to follow their cleanup protocol and scrape up any little flakes of gold they get. Down below in the wash plant, the crew has shovels out, cleaning out all the mud that has remained behind in the crevices of the wash plant, when suddenly a woman calls out to Chris. She leads him up to where she was cleaning out the sluices, and Chris is shocked by what he sees. Chris calls Parker to take a look at the Virgin Ground's first gold. They climb into the wash plant and see a ton of coarse gold flowing down by the gentle stream of water they're using to clean the machine. Parker notices a huge puddle of gold in a corner, clumped together. They speculate that seeing this much gold right off the bat means they are likely to find some really nice nuggets of gold the deeper they dig. They're most surprised by the amount of gold that they got from the ditches. Parker leans over and starts picking little pieces of gold up from the gravel. He sees this as a good sign and that he made the right move by not pulling out when they purchased Dominion. Chris tells him to get out of the way so he can continue the cleanup, and Parker happily hops off the wash plant and heads to his truck. Parker is smiling broadly as he heads off to show Mitch the gold they have already found from cleaning up. This is the best validation they could get, and Parker then heads to speak to Tyson and show him his bounty. The fact that they got a ton of gold from junk has Parker extremely relieved. He talks about how the crew was starting to question all the time and energy they were spending in Australia Creek, but they will truly know whether the effort is worth it when Chris does the final weighing for the day. Back in the gold weighing room, they go over the events of the week and the status of their various gold sites and machines. Big Red makes 462.35 ounces of gold worth over $1 million. Finally, at the moment of truth, Slucifer's 3-day run in Australia Creek is ready to be weighed. Parker wants over 70 ounces of gold, but the final count ends up being 122.9 ounces of gold, delivering a combined season total of 307 ounces for the Parker crew. To them, the huge size of the nuggets they find in Australia Creek is crazy. McCollins finds mysterious remains. The McCollins in their Eureka Creek claim they make a huge discovery, but it is not gold they find. One of the McCollins sons recounts how he was on night shift and he heard Travis over the radio exclaiming that he found a corpse. He then made his way to Travis's side, confused by what he found. The McCollins son helped inspect the mysterious remains and realized that it was a mammoth when he saw the well-preserved trunk. They hauled the body up to their camp and placed it in ice to preserve it. It was an extremely exciting day, and he says that he has heard stories of people in Alaska finding these preserved mammoths and selling them for a lot of money. Brian McCollin, the father and head of their operations, appears over his son's shoulder and says that it's okay to tell the full story. He was offered $2 million for the mammoth after he had already decided to give it to the government. The McCollin clan believe that the mammoth find has blessed their site, and it will bring them many good years and good karma. With the boomerang cut delivering a massive payday last week, the pressure is on as they push their operations to the limit. Can you feel the intensity rising as they race against time with only 2 months left in the season? The high speed and relentless work ethic are taking a toll on the crew. They're running on fumes, but they refuse to give up. Parker Schnabel's crew is bringing in gold on 2 fronts, Dominion Creek and Australia Creek, where they are working the boomerang cut, which delivered a huge payday last week. However, the 2 locations are pushing the crew's operations to the limit. They do not have enough personnel and equipment to keep up with all the work they have. There are only 2 months left of the season, and Parker has mined over 3,400 ounces of gold, closing in on his 5,000-ounce gold target. The high speed and work ethic is taking a toll on the crew. Mitch meets with Parker in his office and tells him that the crew could benefit from more loader operators, as all the current loader operators are working to their maximum capacity and they cannot maintain this pace for much longer. Parker suggests that they take one of the truck drivers and move them over to the loaders. Then he plans to cycle in new truck drivers as needed, since they are much easier to find and hire for short stints of work. Parker wants to try Sandy on the loader because she has some prior experience running a loader. He does think that it would be interesting to see how she does, given how different the environment in the Yukon is compared to anywhere else in the world. Meanwhile, Sandy Dubois is busy running the truck and not really concerned with changing her job title anytime soon. She is 25 years old and she joined Parker's crew this season. She is a Klondike local and has been gold mining for 3 years. Mitch thinks this is a huge step up for Sandy, since running a truck is not the same as running a wash plant. Running a wash plant requires that a person operates the loader, but also taking charge of the entire wash plant. Sandy is excited to get to run the Slucifer. She has run small wash plants before, but nothing like Australia Creek's 250-yard-an-hour monster of a plant, Slucifer. Sandy says she prefers running a loader over a truck any day, but she seems to have trouble with the loader she is operating, saying it sucks as the armrest slams against the key and turning it off while she tries to move into fourth gear. Something soon goes wrong and the loader shuts off, annoying her greatly. She starts feeling the pressure of getting dirt to the Slucifer because it goes through dirt so quickly, and leaving the belts dry can be dangerous for a wash plant of that size. If Sandy does not keep the plant fed, water will whitewash the plant and blow gold out of the sluices, losing them untold amounts of gold. The loader shuts off once more and the belt goes dry. This causes Sandy's body to go into a state of panic, her face going tingly, so she informs Evan over the walkie-talkie of her medical issue. She asks to get her switched out before she falls into a panic attack. She dumps her final load of dirt into the wash plant and asks to be switched out. Tyson looks on from afar in confusion, and he and Evan rush to Sandy's aid. A producer's voice joins the chorus of voices as she pulls Sandy aside to help her go through some breathing exercises to get her panic attack under control. Sandy is crying and trying to get herself together when Tyson offers to take her for a drive to clear her head. Evan is left to run the loader. Broken spring threatens 5,000-ounce goal. Parker's operations have been split into two camps, Dominion and Australia Creek. However, Parker has run into a problem. He is having trouble keeping Dominion moving, and this is the camp that keeps paying all the bills, so they need the Dominion cut to keep producing. So far, Parker has mined 4,000 ounces of gold, and now he needs to keep pushing the crew to go past his goal of 5,000 ounces by the end of the season. Mitch notes they are running out of time, and Tyson is busy moving things along in his area. Tyson says that he was up in Dominion Creek this morning, talking with Mitch and Parker about having Slucifer done mining out the first section of the cut at Australia Creek so they can move to the next. Wash plant boss Tyson Lee needs to mine the Boomerang Cute so they can use the waste tailings to build a new plant pad in the second section, then move Slucifer and have it up and running in its new location by the end of the week. He thinks all these goals will be tough to reach with the amount of people they are working with, but he says that in these moments they need to work all the harder. To help move the tailings to the new plant pad, Tyson has called in mechanic Alec Kelly to figure out a generator that was shutting down randomly. Alec squares that away quickly, so he gets put in a rock truck excavator combo, and he is now self-loading tailings in Slucifer. Tyson is grateful for his presence because he can now focus on making the move seamless. However, Alec finds himself a bit uncomfortable in his position, as he does not think he is very good at it, and lacks the skill and deftness of a true excavator. Suddenly, the wash plant starts rattling dangerously, and Alec runs frantically to shut her down. The Slucifer comes to a stop, and Alec looks inside to see that the shaker spring is still intact, but there is a broken spring in the spring pack. Tyson jumps into the excavator for any heavy lifting, and Alec sighs that the longer the machine is down, the longer they are losing on gold collecting. Slucifer separates gold from larger waste material with a shaker deck that vibrates on 8 springs. One of the springs has broken and caused an imbalance that could put the wash plant at terminal risk. To fix this, Tyson will lift the shaker deck with a 480 excavator, replace the broken spring, lower it back into place, and fire it up. Alex speculates that the spring got a little hurt where the spring was clapping against one of its own coils and just broke it off. After the replacement and 1 hour of downtime, Slucifer is back at work. McCaughan brothers make big mistakes. Over in Eureka Creek, the McCaughan family is saying goodbye to their father, who is packing his suitcase to oversee work on some other sites. They have mined just 737 ounces of gold, which is less than half of their 1,500-ounce season goal. Brian McCaughan recognizes that his leaving will give his sons a big challenge of running the operations on their own. He hopes his sons can pick up some good days of washing. Sharon McCaughan, the wife of Brian and mother to Bryson Gage, tells them that they are short-handed with their father gone, so they need to step up. 23-year-old Bryce McCaughan is glad his mother is up at the office and out of his space as he works. Bryce is in charge of hauling pay to the plant. Meanwhile, his 21-year-old brother, Gage, gets ready to fire up their trommel, named McMidas. To Gage, this opportunity of working out of the supervision of his father only means they have to make sure not to blow anything up and to just keep the plant spinning. He completes his maintenance and declares the trommel is ready to run. The brothers need to bring in 130 ounces of gold this week to meet their goal. As soon as Gage turns the trommel on, he quickly has to turn it back off. He calls Wayne over the walkie-talkie explaining that a belt has gotten loose in the gearbox. Gage says he saw some belts flip up and a bolt has come loose. Wayne inspects the issue with a more experienced eye and agrees that a turnbuckle has loosened. This is a result of a torque arm that actually holds the gearbox in position has come disconnected, and now they cannot run the machine. The torque arm is critical to keeping the belts tight enough to spin the trommel's barrel. Without being held in place, the belts have slipped on the drive wheel, and to fix it, Gage now has to reattach the bar and retension the belts until there is enough power being transferred from the motor to the gearbox to get the trommel spinning again. The crew has to deal with a ton of mud and dirt wedged into the crevices of the machine as they move to replace the pieces. Gage tightens everything and they turn the wash plant back on. They are sluicing for the first time that day, only an hour behind schedule. Gage grimly says that right when his father leaves, destruction happens. Later that day, they are working under a time constraint that has them coming up with the idea of doing a night shift. Gage pushes for them to make their own calls without their father. If the brothers can pull it off, they could double their gold haul by the time their father returns. Bryce is heading down to the wash plant to feed the hoe later that night and has volunteered to take the first night shift. Gage heads off to bed and Bryce takes his place in the truck. He explains that working at night really gets to a person, saying it makes them tired and groggy, but he is comfortable sitting and feeding the plant all night. He plans on doing tailings during any breaks. Since they are short on crew, Bryce works alone and is seen with his eyes closed in moments. The next morning, Brian arrives and he takes a look at the site and is shocked by what he sees. Tailings have piled up right into the trommel, and it has led to an expensive mistake. When Bryce woke up, he kept feeding the plant, but not clearing any tailings. The barrel was blocked by the tailings and ground the trommel to a stop. Gage says that this means they will have to spend an entire day shoveling out the tailings and cores from the drum by hand. The night shift has been a total disaster, putting them back more than they were originally. Clogged with up to 40 tons of pay dirt, it will take the entire crew away from their work to clear it up. Brian decides they are going to slow and says they should just flush it out with the water pump, saving 8 hours of shoveling. Waters and shovels combined, they are moving the pay dirt out of the trommel in no time. Brian is proud that Bryce took responsibility for his actions and is determined to do another night shift to hit their goal. Trommel spinning, they are back to the gold mining. Z almost rolls off a cliff. Over in Duncan Creek, the Ness crew is coming closer to the end of the season, and they are pushing to reach their 1,000-ounce gold goal Rick desperately needs this year. Rick is convinced that the best gold they are going to get is from Raleigh Valley. After last week's big 92-ounce haul, Rick has decided to continue running pay from the bench through Wash Plant Rocky. Trey Charlie is feeling the pressure to keep the wash plant running, while everyone else is hauling pay out of Raleigh Valley. At Raleigh Valley, Rick is building a stockpile of pay dirt because he plans on shutting down Rocky at the end of the week and fire up his massive wash plant Monster Red instead. Since they have been short on people all season, Rick has invited his friend Z to come down and help out with this last stretch. In a flashback, we see longtime friend Z Zaremba helping Rick kickstart his season and resurrect Monster Red after a year out of commission. In it, we see Z saying how proud he is of Rick getting back into work and Rick being deeply appreciative of his friend. Z is coming back from spring and immediately notices that everything looks different and that the crew has been hard at work. Rick says he threw himself 100% into his work and feels better than he has in a long time. Z jumps into a truck and gets started right away. It's been 5 years since he has been in a rock truck. The first task Z must complete is to remove all the old boulders from around Monster Red's hopper feeder. Z does not find the truck to be an ideal machine, but it is all they have to work with, so he tries to make the best of it to help out his friend. Buzz is shifting boulders to the other side of the creek as well, and Z is talking about how happy he is by the progress, when suddenly the truck veers off the shoulder of the road and the truck sinks into some dirt. Z is cursing up a storm as he tries to dislodge himself. Rick races over and panics that he is about to lose a truck. Z is hanging over a 20-foot deep tailings pond. Rick dislikes how the truck is leaning, threatening to tip over with all of those massive boulders still inside the truck bed. Buzz tells everyone to get out of the way as he begins to scoop the rocks out of the truck to make it easier to pull the truck off the ledge it's hanging over. The moment is tense as a ton of the crew gathers around to watch this careful operation that can end in disaster. Rick oversees them attacking thick chains to the truck as an added precaution. With the rocks removed, Buzz carefully pulls Z, who is still inside the rock truck, back onto solid ground. Rick yells for Z to straighten the wheel out, not to turn it. Buzz is taken aback by the speed of the truck and shouts at Z to slow down. Suddenly, the rock truck slams down into the ledge and the engine turns off. Now Z points the wheels the wrong way and is directed by Rick to fix it quickly, as Buzz attempts to pull the rock truck back to the road. After that tense rescue mission, everyone is laughing in relief. They all feel lucky that things worked themselves out and they head back to work. It cost them a couple of hours, but everyone is safe. Subscribe to the channel if you have enjoyed it so far.